asteroid by 2025 and orbiting Mars by 2035. But see, the problem with those alleged goals is that they are so far in the future that they require no action by the current administration. Okay, and so, I mean, it's ridiculous to argue, well, should we go to Deimos or Phobos in 2035? You know, Deimos. None of this has anything to do with anything. So they were still in Russian they have a word, zavtra, okay? And it has the same meaning as mañana in Mexican, except without the same sense of urgency. And so the Obama program, it's, yes, we will have a goal, zavtra.
Okay, first question.
Well, on that note, it strikes me that the pushback helped Obama and his minions figure out how to talk the talk, but they don't know how to walk the walk yet. Why don't we in the Mars Society try to put together a technical task force to do what Augustine did not do, and specify the precursor technologies, the testing that we need, and specify in gory detail, so they can't stand it anymore, what we think would be sufficient to have a reasonable short time scale transit to Mars. I think we in the Mars Society could gather the expertise and attempt to do that. And I think if they aren't just engaged in a masturbatory technology exercise, they might actually listen, or Congress might actually listen. So I was curious amongst the fellows here, I mean, what technologies would you kind of put in that front list, apart from heavy lift? We've got Mars gravity biosatellites twisting in the wind. Nobody knows what happens at 3/8 gravity. Why isn't that thing parked outside the ISS spinning happily? What sort of money does it take to make that happen? Why doesn't that get in the budget, in the technology development, stuff like that? So I'm just curious, what are the little stepstones or milestones along the way that we could identify and push on an element by element basis through the political system?
Okay, the idea of a technical task force from the Mars Society. Tony.
I'd like to do a little preliminary information about that. We talked a little bit about that at the steering committee last night. But NASA right now has this thing called Design Reference Architecture 5.0, which is a nominal human Mars mission. And it's evolved over the years. I guess it started out as Mars Semi-Direct, as I recall. And there's this graph going around that Lori Garver has referred to, and the new budget opens up this new thing called the Office of the Chief Technologist for Technology Development. That's led by Bobby Brown. And this graph, envision, if you will, a graph of the mass of the material you need to put in low Earth orbit to get to Mars and back. And so help me, it starts out at 12 times the mass of the space station. I don't know how. It's hard to, I can't find any description of what this hardware would consist of. And then they show this curve coming down, and the first technology they list is improvement of cryogenic storage in space so that you have low boil-off, et cetera. And then there's various other things, and in situ resource utilization is there, but there's no thing about, nothing about artificial gravity. But I wanted to put a little context that NASA at least has a list of things that ought to be worked on, but there's also the case for Mars.
12 times the ISS mass list of things? I mean,
well, and the final insult to injury part is once you get all these technologies developed, the final mass of your mission in low Earth orbit to start with is only about twice the mass of the space station.
Okay, Jeff. Okay. Quickly, please.
Yeah. Yeah, since I know we're running short on time and long on questions, that might be a useful exercise from a technical standpoint, identifying those technologies. I don't know how persuasive, though, that would be in Congress right now, because if you listen to the arguments taking place right now, they're not arguing merits of technology. They're not arguing merits of propulsion systems. They're arguing about jobs right now. And that's the key focus because of the current state of the economy and the concerns about the loss of jobs as the president's plan goes through, coupled on top of the existing plans to retire the shuttle. They're very much focused right now on jobs. So making a technological argument for a particular approach may not be speaking the right language in Congress right now.
Just one thing about that. Yeah, they want to pay money for jobs, but which do you think is more appealing to the American people? Paying money for jobs to NASA and the space industry to send humans to Mars, or shelling out money to keep more state police on the payroll so they can harass motorists with traffic tickets at speed traps?
Okay, next question, I'm going to ask you to be very fast because we literally have 4 more minutes.
Okay. For a living, I analyze business data. If you go to Forbes.com, you'll find a large list of publicly listed companies that have never made a penny. They've raised sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. There's a group of serial entrepreneurs, likewise, who've had 10 or 12 of these companies, never made a penny. They've never broken any law or regulation. If these people can raise money, why can't we all put our heads together and come up with a methodology to raise money for a private Mars expedition? The heck with the governments, you know, they're for want of a better word, jacking around. Why can't we do it?
Okay, one answer from someone.
Well, we need to get some of these people on our board.
Yeah.
All right, well.
Anything else? Okay. Okay, next question, please.
All right. Hi. First of all, I want to say I completely agree with everything all of you said. That out of the way, I think it's great that you guys are trying to, push the Senate thing and, get the politicians into it and everything. But, and that was a big part of why the space program was successful back in the 60s. You know, there was all the political motivation. But another part of why it was such a big thing back then was, public support. You know, the media was all over it. Everyone was all gung-ho for getting to the moon and stuff. I was just wondering if you guys were doing anything, or if there's even anything we can do to get a public backing of this, motivation for the public to actually get interested behind this, because really there really hasn't been much interesting going on at least on that scale for quite some time. And like, I've tried looking for stuff in the news, about all this. I'm not quite as informed as you guys, and even when I do find something, it's usually in the back of the paper, or kind of hard to find.
Okay, thank you. Robert or Jeff, can you respond in 30 seconds?
Yeah, if you want to get the public interested, you have to make it relevant to them. You have to appeal to some basic need or concern. Fear, greed, and curiosity are usually the big three.
Right.
The space race in the 60s was really, generated by and large fear of falling behind the Soviet Union, with a little bit of curiosity thrown in about space exploration. You have to find a way, if you're going to push Mars exploration, to appeal to one or some group of those, I think, basic needs, or find something else that's going to be equally compelling and sustainable over the long term, given that it's unlikely that you're going to see a huge budget increase for NASA for the foreseeable future, just looking at the long-term fiscal trends our country faces.
Okay, thank you.
In addition to fear, greed, and curiosity, people are also motivated by love, and love of adventure. And
right.
the reason why the space program currently has only a modest level of interest is because it's not engaged in the great adventure. Reason why the space program of the 1960s focused enormous interest was not because of fear of the Soviet Union among the public, okay? It was because we were on the great adventure, and NASA has to embrace the great adventure again, and it'll have all the public support it could possibly need.
Okay, thank you. Next question, very quickly, please.
Yeah, very quickly. I have many, but I will ask one for Jeff. What do you think the new business, new space business pushback would be on the proposed Senate bill and House bill?
Well, certainly the commercial space industry wants something that looks a lot like the president's proposal in terms of the funding level. The question is, will they be satisfied with something more along the lines of the Senate level? I think it remains to be seen. They're still pushing to get as much money for commercial space development programs, and that's a mix of both, as I mentioned on Thursday night, a mix of both some of the entrepreneurial new space companies like SpaceX, but also some of the established companies like Boeing that's also shown interest in commercial crew. So they're going to push to try and get as much money. The question is, can you do a reasonable commercial crew program with the sort of funding levels that we might end up if we end up with the Senate version? I think that's still an open question.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Second last question.
I was wondering where the 70 metric tons figure came from. Why not 50 or 100? Is that based on any mission analysis or anything done?
A very straightforward kind of shuttle-derived launch vehicle can be designed with a 75-ton capability.
Last question.
In regards to the letters that you're asking us to send to our representatives, dear Representative somebody, I'm urging you to support Senate Bill number what? And what is its name?
Look for the NASA Authorization Act of 2010. I don't know the Senate bill number. It just came out recently. It's 37 something or other. A good resource is a website called thomas.loc.gov. It's run by the Library of Congress. It's where all of the current and past legislation is archived. You can go there, do a search for NASA Authorization Act, and turn that up.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you all for participating.